Well, I just want to start off with a very basic question. Okay, so you had a very prestigious job at Dowd Bennett, and you left that job and that salary to come here. Why did you leave that job to take this job?
Well, I'll just tell you a little bit about how it came about.
Sure.
So the resignation occurred, which, quite frankly, I think took people by surprise in terms of the timing. And when that happened, I received calls from people. I would say I received two types of calls. I received calls from people saying, "Is this something you would be interested in doing, since the governor's going to have to appoint?" And the second type of call I received was calls from people saying, basically, kind of assuming that I would be interested in doing it and saying, what can I do to help you get the governor to appoint you, that sort of thing. So when I got those inquiries, which was very flattering, I really thought to myself, okay, I had to consider whether it is something I would be willing to do. And as I thought about it, I thought there would only be a couple reasons I wouldn't do it. One reason would be that it was going to be too much work and that I could fail. And I didn't think that was a very good reason not to do it. The second reason would have been what you mentioned, the financial considerations, that I'm going to take a pay cut in this position. And, to me, when people are saying to you, we believe that you could be helpful to the community in doing this, we think this is an important service you can provide, I'm not going to give either of those answers as to why I won't do it. So it ended up being really an easy decision.
Interesting. And so one of the things I wanted to ask you too is, have you talked to Kim Gardner?
No.
That's interesting. So you're coming into this role and you haven't been able to talk to the predecessor at all?
I haven't attempted to.
Oh, okay. Interesting. So I know you've only been here, 24 hours really, but you were doing some work ahead of your swearing in ceremony. So you've gotten a little sense of this. What are some of the things you have seen in the short time you've been involved in this office right up front that you think need to be immediately addressed?
Well, I think I spoke about them yesterday at my swearing in. The first thing we need to address is, of course, getting the office restaffed. We need to get our senior staff in here as quickly as possible. I'm sure you saw yesterday, was really excited by the fact that Marvin Tier has come back as Chief Trial Counsel. That was a big boost to our efforts. We need to build strong relationships, collaborative relationships with the police, with our local prosecutors. Already have had a meeting with Wesley Bell, have been in discussions with Sailor Fleming. We're trying to find a time to sit down together. Already had a meeting with regional prosecutors last week. So really focusing on that collaboration piece. And we're just going to expand that as time goes on. We're going to expand it out to the community. I'm going to meet with clergy. I'm going to meet with, just every aspect of the community, because that's what it's going to take for us to address the public safety issue, the violent crime issue that currently exists in St. Louis.
How do you specifically plan to rebuild those relationships, especially with the police department?
Like you rebuild, like you establish any relationship, right? You first have to start listening. I've already had a couple of nice conversations with Chief Tracy. We haven't had a chance to sit down and have an extended discussion. But that initial discussion, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, Chief, you've been in your position a bit longer than me. You probably have some ideas about ways that our offices can work better together. and I'm just going to listen. I'm sure that as I learn more about what's going on in our office and complete my assessment of our office, I'm sure at some point we're going to sit down and I'm going to say, now I have some suggestions for you about ways we can work better together. So it's just going to be a lot of discussions, a lot of listening.
Gotcha. The reopening of the warrant office, you had touched on that too, being, a pretty significant development. Why is that so critical and why is that important?
It is important that the warrant office is reopened because that is basically the intake mechanism for cases. It's the way that it's been done here for many years. One of the people advising me is someone who served as first assistant in this office from 1976 to 1978. And that process that was in place for intaking cases and evaluating cases and making charging decisions goes back, I know, at least that far because it was described to me. So, yeah, that's the intake mechanism. It's important to have it open. It really assists in making good decisions at the outset of a case.
And going back to the staffing issue as well, yes, the staff is low, but a lot of the staff members that remain were staunch supporters of Kim Gardner and her policies. In fact, I saw some of them at the swearing-in yesterday. How do you plan to, and during the quo warranto process, they defended the office and said that, things were running well and she was being unfairly targeted, those sorts of things. How do you plan to address the staff that's already here that were supporters of those failed policies?
So we're looking forward, not looking backwards. You say that there are employees here who are staunch supporters of Kim Gardner. That is not something I'm familiar with. If you tell me that, maybe that's so, but I'm going to really assess people and evaluate people from here going forward, and that's how we're going to make decisions.
A lot of her discussions were centered on her diversion programs. Since you've been here and what you know of the office, are you seeing any evidence that there was a successful diversion program in place?
Like you said, I've been here for about 24 hours. My assessment of the office and how things are going is ongoing. The diversion program is certainly something we're going to look at and assess, but we just haven't done that yet.
Okay, gotcha. Now, this has been asked several times, but just to give you the opportunity again, what is your position on the exclusion list?
So my position on the exclusion list, which, by the way, I have not seen. So I haven't seen an exclusion list. I'm not really sure exactly what it is, but that's not really relevant because for me, I'm not looking at an exclusion list. It's not something I'm going around the office digging through drawers for. What I'm going to do is what I've always done in my career, which is look at cases, look at the facts, look at the law, make a determination as to what you can prove in court, and go forward. That's how I've always approached it, private practice, when I was a prosecutor, and that's how we're going to approach it in this office.
Gotcha. And another thing that was a big part of Kim Gardner's success with the voters here, got 84% of the vote, was her talking about being a reform-minded prosecutor. What can you do to assure voters that you're going to carry on with a reform-minded prosecution approach, or is that just not your approach?
So I guess one thing I should make clear is that, I'm not in a political campaign. I'm here to stabilize the office and play a role in addressing the violent crime crisis that currently exists in St. Louis. That's my focus. So I'm not focusing on votes or the next election. To people who ask me, are you a reform-minded prosecutor, I would say that I am someone who believes in doing what makes sense. Like I said yesterday in the press conference, it's going to be a balanced approach. It's going to involve prevention, intervention, and enforcement. And that's what I believe in, and that's what we're going to do.
Gotcha. And along those lines too, prosecutors play a major role, as you know, in bonds. And there's been a lot of discussion about, people that are not able to post bond, having to serve time in jail, that people with the means to post bond don't. What is your position on cash-only bonds?
I will think that through more. Obviously, sure. I'm in my first 24 hours. But I will tell you this. I do feel strongly that if my assessment, if my office's assessment is that there are no conditions under which a person can be released in which they won't pose a danger to themselves or the community, we're going to be seeking detention.
So it's really, your approach is really a case-by-case basis. It's just not a blanket sort of approach.
That, I would agree with that.
Okay, fair enough. Philosophically speaking also, a basic question for most prosecutors is, what is your position on the death penalty?
So I'm not here to share my personal position on the death penalty. That's not something I'm here to discuss.
Okay.
If you want to ask me what my position on the death penalty would be in this office.
Yeah, if confronted with a case.
Yeah. I'm sorry, did I?
No, that's okay. That's okay.
I will consider all the factors, take a look at it, and make a decision. That's the job of a circuit attorney, and that's what I'll do.
Okay. Again, case by case.
Case by case. That's how I've, at this point in my career, I can't count up how many cases I've been involved in, how many investigations I've been involved in, but I can tell you this, I have truly approached each one as a single matter, never cookie cutter. You always, I think actually one of my strengths as a lawyer is that I'm always thinking, I am always looking at issues anew and looking at each case on a case-by-case basis. So that's the approach I prefer to take as much as I can.
Okay. And as far as, there is an immediate crisis. There's immediate things going on right now, as you know, and there's long-term things going on right now. The more immediate things are the trials that are already scheduled to take place. It's still assigned to prosecutors that no longer work here and haven't for a while. How do you plan to address the trials that are coming up within the coming days and weeks now?
So what I will tell you is that I didn't have much time to start working on things or thinking about things before I started. As you know, the process ended up being even more expedited than what we anticipated. So I had about, 6 or 7 days to transition from my law practice to this job. But that is something that I've been focused on from the moment I was appointed. It's no coincidence that my first hire was chief trial counsel, who's going to oversee that process. And that was what I spent any time I had to work yesterday. That's what I spent it on. So that's a high priority, and we're on it. We're looking at it. I'm confident we're going to be able to navigate through that.
A lot of the attorneys left in this office, and it has been a long-standing complaint from the previous administration that a lot of the attorneys in this office are really young, very inexperienced. And typically, in years past, there have been older attorneys with a lot of experience that have served as mentors and that sort of thing. What is your plan to address the inexperience level in this office and training new attorneys?
We're going to have to put something in place. I always tell people, the practice of law is basically apprenticeship. The new people learn from the people who are before them, And the quality of lawyer that you are is a lot of times dictated by the quality of person who teaches you. I've been fortunate in my career. I've worked with very good senior attorneys, and so I feel like I've learned my practice well. So in this scenario where we've lost so many senior people, we're going to have to figure out a way to devote additional resources to training. And that's something that I'm already focused on, and already focused on thinking of ways to get the resources to make up the training deficit that we currently have.
Why don't you like one or two more questions since we're
Sure.
waiting for
Yeah.
the next crew to get in?
Let's see here. Pretty much covered a lot of it. Of course, one of the main questions you've been asked several times already, but what are your plans for 2024? Do you see yourself running for election for this office?
I have not considered it. I will tell you that prior to this circumstance arising, running for political office was not something that I was on the radar screen for me. Under this circumstance, I'm going to certainly consider it, but I've made no decisions. And I really am right now, can say, I am spending every waking moment thinking about what we need to do to turn this office around and start meeting our obligations to the courts and to the public. So I'm not thinking about running for election.
Right now?
Yeah, right now I'm not thinking about it. I truly, all that runs through my mind is the issues we have to address to get this office back to performing at a high level.
Okay. And then do you know, as far as, this is a phrase that's often thrown around within the progressive community, restorative justice and diversion and alternatives. What does that mean to you, and do you plan to approach this job with those philosophies in mind?
I will say that I believe diversion is an important part of what our office does. It's an important part of what the courts do. It's an important part of what the criminal justice system does. So diversion is something we're going to continue, and we're going to do it in a way that makes sense and gives chances where that's the appropriate thing. I can tell you this, people who commit violent crimes are going to be prosecuted. That's not something that we're going to back off on in any way at all.
Gotcha. And I guess one last one is the thousands of cases that have been talked about in that email box. How do you address thousands of cases that are piled up in an email box?
I haven't heard it referenced that way. I gather what you're referring to as the warrant office
Exactly.
backlog. Yeah, that's something we're assessing. I assigned someone to assess that literally probably an hour after I was sworn in, and we're going to assess it and we're going to approach it. Obviously, we're going to have to devote some additional resources to it, and we're also going to have to be creative.
Could I do one last one?
Sure.
Okay. There has also been talk about all these regional prosecutors wanting to help out in this situation, whether it be the county prosecutors, the U.S. Attorney's Office, the Attorney General's Office. How do you see extra prosecution? How do you see those other entities helping you in this process?
They're going to be key. I'm going to lean heavily on them. Those offices. Here at this office, we have a deficit of experienced prosecutors. U.S. Attorney's Office has some very experienced state prosecutors who came out of this office, and they would fall into that category of circuit attorneys I've been talking about, who are very devoted and focused on leading the resurgence of this office. So we're going to rely heavily on getting the experienced prosecutors we need in the short term from our neighboring prosecuting offices. That would be the U.S. Attorney's Office, St. Louis County Prosecuting Attorney's Office to the extent we can. Of course, they have to meet their current caseloads, but I think they have some capacity to help us, and those are the discussions I'm very eager to have.
So kind of temporarily, borrowing attorneys here and there until you can make permanent hires, basically?
We're going to do it with a combination of permanent hires and assistance from neighboring prosecuting attorneys' offices.
Okay, sounds good.
Great.
Well, it sounds like you need to get going, right?
Yeah, I do have a couple. I have a couple pile up on the runway.
I guess I should ask one more question. I'm sorry. I always leave it this way. Do you have anything else you want to add? Anything we might not have discussed that you think is an important point to add?
Nope, I feel like we've covered it pretty well.
Okay, fair enough. Sounds good. All right, well, thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate it. Did you guys need to get anything, or you got a whole setup, so I think we're good.
We're good.